The Adventures and Hardships of Joseph Plumb Martin, Chapter VIII, Campaign of 1782. Hey there, history enthusiasts. Welcome back to another deep dive into the American Revolution. Today, we're stepping into the shoes of Joseph Plumb Martin as we explore Chapter VIII of his memoir, The Adventures of a Revolutionary Soldier, the Campaign of 1782. Now, if you haven't met Joseph Plumb Martin yet, you're in for a treat. This guy wasn't a general or a statesman. He was a regular soldier, an everyman who enlisted at the tender age of 15 and served for 7 grueling years. His memoirs are a treasure trove of first-hand accounts that pull back the curtain on what it was really like to fight for independence. Unlike the sanitized versions of history we often get, Martin's writings are raw, witty, and surprisingly candid. They offer us priceless insights into the daily grind of a Continental soldier. So, let's set the scene. After the monumental defeat of Lord Cornwallis at Yorktown in October 1781, one might think the war was a done deal. But here's the kicker. Peace talks were dragging on, and British forces still occupied key cities like New York, Charleston, and Savannah. The capture of over 7,000 British troops at Yorktown was a game-changer, a 25% reduction in Britain's deployable forces in America. Strategically, this was huge, but for soldiers like Joseph stationed in Burlington, New Jersey, the day-to-day drudgery continued. They faced the morbid pains of military life without the adrenaline of battle to distract them. The paradox of this phony war period was that while large-scale fighting had ceased, soldiers remained bound by strict discipline and endless routines. Now onto the tale of the elusive deserter, a man who seems to have made a hobby out of enlisting and deserting. After being discharged from the New Jersey line, he enlists with Joseph's unit, only to scamper off on furlough and not return. Not exactly model soldier behavior. But wait, it gets better. He then joins a corps of new levies in his home state, collecting enlistment bounties each time. Back then, bounties could be as high as $200, a small fortune in 1782 currency, equivalent to about $5,000 today. Fed up with this charade, Joseph's captain dispatches him and 2 other men to track down the deserter. It's a mission that reflects the challenges of maintaining troop numbers and discipline in the Continental Army, which struggled with desertion rates as high as 20% in some units. So, off they go, with optimism high and supplies low. Their provisions? Fresh pork that's so fatty and unsalted it's practically inedible, and hardtack biscuits, affectionately known as tooth dullers. Traveling in early winter conditions, trudging through 6 inches of snow, they quickly realize this mission isn't going to be a walk in the park. The logistics of movement during this era were brutal. Roads were little more than dirt paths, and soldiers often marched 20 miles a day carrying 60-pound packs. Food preservation methods were primitive at best. Without proper salting or smoking, meat spoiled quickly. It's no wonder their pork was no good to them. It probably started turning rancid within days. But then, a stroke of good fortune. Their journey aligns with Thanksgiving, and they experience the warmth and generosity of local civilians. At one farmhouse, they're invited in for a traditional New Jersey breakfast. Buckwheat slapjacks, smothered in butter and honey, accompanied by rich chocolate. Remember, chocolate in the 18th century was a luxury item imported from the Caribbean, often consumed as a beverage rather than a solid bar. These acts of kindness weren't just about food. They were symbolic of the civilian support crucial to the revolutionary cause. It's estimated that only about 1/3 of the colonial population actively supported the rebellion, so these displays of hospitality were significant morale boosters. And who could forget the cheeky encounter in Maidenhead? Yes, that's really the name. This town, now known as Lawrenceville, was a small village in New Jersey. When Joseph asks a young lady how far it is to Maidenhead, and his comrade makes a suggestive comment, she quickly puts him in his place. "There's no danger of its being more scarce on your account," she quips. This little exchange showcases the sharp wit prevalent in colonial America, as well as the social norms and courtesies, or lack thereof, in interactions between soldiers and civilians. Realizing the deserter has given them the slip, possibly aided by local sympathizers or simply due to the vastness of the area, they decide to cut their losses. Considering the average soldier's pay was about 6.66 cents a month, often delayed or paid in devalued currency, the incentive to rigorously pursue one deserter was low. Plus, the allure of warm homes and good food during Thanksgiving was hard to resist. This decision also underscores the resource constraints faced by the Continental Army. Manpower was stretched thin, and chasing after every deserter wasn't always feasible or practical. Back in Burlington, the atmosphere darkens. An outbreak of yellow fever sweeps through the ranks. Historically, yellow fever epidemics were common in the 18th century, especially in port cities like Philadelphia and New York, due to the mosquito populations. The mortality rate for yellow fever could be as high as 50%. Joseph describes intense symptoms, severe nosebleeds, delirium, and extreme weakness. Medical understanding at the time was rudimentary. The concept of viruses was unknown, and treatments often did more harm than good. Hospitals were ill-equipped, lacking basic supplies like clean bedding and adequate food. Joseph notes that 8 men died in quick succession, a significant loss in a small unit. In the midst of this crisis, the mysterious widow emerges as a beacon of hope. Her nightly delivery of posset provided not just physical nourishment, but also a psychological lift. Posset was more than a drink. It was considered a remedy for colds and fevers due to its warming properties and alcoholic content. Wine, being rich in antioxidants, was one of the few medicines available. Her anonymity adds depth to her altruism. She didn't seek recognition or repayment, embodying the spirit of selfless service. Acts like hers were vital in sustaining the troops, given that the Continental Congress struggled to support the Army financially. As Joseph recovers, he reflects on the fragility of life. He mentions losing his hair, a common aftermath of severe illness due to nutritional deficiencies and stress. He also observes that some soldiers were crazy as coots, likely suffering from neurological effects of the fever or perhaps PTSD, though the term didn't exist then. This period highlights the often overlooked impact of disease in warfare. Historically, disease has killed more soldiers than combat. In the Revolutionary War, it's estimated that disease accounted for about 70% of military deaths. No sooner does he regain his strength than he's back in the saddle, or rather, on foot. The Continental Army had to be nimble, often redeploying units to respond to threats or to replace troops whose enlistments were up. Joseph is ordered to pursue 3 deserters heading toward New York City, which was still under British control and a haven for loyalists. Desertion wasn't just a breach of discipline, it had strategic implications, as deserters could provide the enemy with valuable intelligence. Despite covering approximately 90 miles in 24 hours, a staggering feat, they return empty-handed. The physical toll of such forced marches cannot be overstated, especially on men recovering from illness and malnourishment. Tensions between enlisted men and officers were not uncommon. The class divide was stark. Officers were typically from the gentry, while soldiers were often poor farmers or laborers. The captain's harsh discipline fuels resentment. Corporal punishment was standard practice, but it bred contempt and could undermine unit cohesion. The men's plot to scare or possibly harm him with a canteen filled with 3 pounds of gunpowder is a serious escalation. 3 pounds of black powder is no joke. That's enough to cause a significant explosion. Joseph's intervention likely prevented a deadly incident. His ability to dissuade them demonstrates leadership qualities and a concern for the greater good, despite his own grievances with the captain. Let's delve deeper into Butter Hill, now known as Storm King Mountain. Rising over 1,300 feet above the Hudson River, its steep cliffs are composed of Precambrian granite, making it a challenging and dangerous climb, even today. Joseph's solo ascent reflects the restlessness and perhaps the need for solitude or thrill that soldiers might seek during lulls in action. Finding himself stranded near the summit with no safe route forward or back, he contemplates the folly of his actions. His eventual descent is a testament to human determination and the will to survive. This episode not only serves as an adventure story, but also offers metaphorical insights into the perils of overconfidence and the importance of heeding advice, a timeless lesson. On yet another occasion, Joseph's pursuit of a wounded squirrel leads him onto a slippery rock face, a classic example of how quickly a mundane activity can turn perilous. Sliding toward an 80-foot drop, he grabs onto a red cedar, the eastern red cedar, Juniperus virginiana, known for its hardy nature and deep roots in rocky soil. This thin lifeline between life and death underscores the constant risks present in the wilderness. It also reflects the broader theme of the thin line soldiers walked between survival and demise, whether on the battlefield or off. These personal anecdotes enrich our understanding of the era, highlighting not just the grand historical events, but the everyday dangers and experiences that shaped these men's lives. Returning to military duties, Joseph and his unit focus on constructing winter quarters at West Point, a strategic fortification on the Hudson River. The barracks they build are described as elegant, featuring 2 stories, brick chimneys, and spacious accommodations. This was a significant improvement over previous winters, where soldiers often suffered in makeshift huts. West Point was a critical defensive position, controlling the S-shaped curve of the Hudson River and preventing British ships from advancing. Fortifying it was essential for the security of the northern colonies. The act of building also served to occupy the soldiers, foster teamwork, and improve morale. Idle hands, after all, could lead to discontent and disciplinary issues. And so, as winter tightens its grip, Joseph's 7th campaign draws to a close. This chapter in his memoir encapsulates the multifaceted nature of war, not just the battles, but the pursuits, the illnesses, the personal struggles, and the small acts of kindness that made it all bearable. Joseph Plumb Martin's accounts are invaluable to historians and enthusiasts alike. They offer a granular view of the Revolutionary War, filling in the gaps left by official records and providing a voice to the common soldier. His reflections remind us that history is not just about dates and events, but about people, their fears, their hopes, their mistakes, and their triumphs. Thanks for joining me on this immersive journey into Joseph Plumb Martin's campaign of 1782. If you found this exploration insightful, don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe for more in-depth historical analyses, and drop a comment below about what struck you the most in this chapter. Let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, keep delving into history. There's always more beneath the surface.